my toddler won't listen. Sound familiar? Well, you're not alone. The truth of the matter is we tend to confuse listening with not having heard. And in fact, your toddler can hear. Of course they can. They listen to everything that you say, but they are not developmentally able to always control their behaviour and therefore act upon what they have heard. So I thought the best way to approach this would be to list the top mistakes that I have seen parents do, and I've probably been guilty of them as well, and then how to quickly find a solution to those mistakes. So by pointing out what we do on a daily basis and then what we can do to fix it, it's a really good way to turn around our parenting style. So mistake number 1 is one of my top pet hates, and that is shouting instructions from another room. It is the most common mistake I see parents make and hear parents make. And they come to me and they say, oh, my toddler's not listening. They don't do as I say. And I say, well, where were you when you gave them the instruction? Oh, well, I was in the kitchen and I said, it's time for bed. They need to tidy up. Now, toddlers are not going to hear that. They won't listen to it. They won't respond to it because toddlers are living in the moment. So if they are playing and they're concentrating on something in front of them, they are just not going to register words that come from another room. They really aren't. So you can't shout from another room. You can't offer instruction over their heads. You have to engage. You have to teach them how to listen to your words. And that moves me on to mistake number 2, not making eye contact. So when you want to give your toddler an instruction and you want them to listen to you, you have to get down to their level and you have to make eye contact. Unless you've made that eye contact, you might as well not bother with any other words that you're going to say. Because if your toddler is focused on something else, unless you physically get them engaged and physically looking at you, then they are not going to hear your words. The next thing that many parents do, and the mistake number 3, is that they make their instructions too complicated. Toddlers need to have clear, concise instructions that are easy to follow. They don't need to even know the reason why, for instance, you want them to tidy up straight away. So you could say, can you please tidy up? You need to hurry up because we're running late. We need to get to school because we've got to pick up your older brother or sister, blah, 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 blah. And so you go on and you go on. 80% of those words are unnecessary. All you need to do is get in the moment, down to their level, make eye contact and say, come on, let's tidy up together. We need to get going. We've got to pick your brother up from school. Boom, boom, boom. And you help them listen by actively getting the action moving. Don't wait for them to move. You start tidying up. Give them a job to do. Say, here you go. Why don't you put the cars in that box while I put the Lego in this box? Do it together. In that way, you have had a positive outcome from your instruction, and they have learned that by listening to you and engaging with you, this is what needs to happen. And that's all that toddlers need. They need instruction and they need help. They're not going to not listen to you because they're being naughty or they want to upset you or they're ignoring you because they don't want to even do what you want them to do. They're probably perfectly happy to do what you want them to do. They just need to know how they can actually fulfill that instruction. So another mistake that we often make is that we assume that our toddler has understood what we're saying. So sometimes things can be a bit complicated for them to comprehend, especially if you're taking them away from something they were engaged with and they're expecting them to make this shift to actually focus in on what you're saying. So if you want them to do something that's quite complex, then a good thing to do is to ask them after you've given the instructions, do you understand? This is especially good if you're asking them to stop doing something that you don't want them to do. So for instance, if they were throwing their toys around the room, you get down to their level and say, please don't throw your toys inside. We go outside to throw things. Let's go outside to throw a ball. Do you understand? And if they nod, you can also, if they've got the vocabulary for an older child, say of 3, can probably repeat back to you what you've said. That way, you can make it certain that they have understood what you've said. Because as I've said earlier, it's not always apparent that they actually comprehend what you want them to do. But getting this reinforcement for them, even if they just nod and say, did you understand what I asked you to do? And they nod, then you know you've made a connection. And then if you do have to discipline further, you can do so with a clear conscience, knowing that your child has fully understood what you ask them to do. But without getting that clarification, you could end up moving into a disciplinary situation where you actually are disciplining something that they haven't understood, and that's not fair, and they wouldn't learn anything from it. Now, another thing that I always advise parents to do, because I see them making this mistake, is you're not fully present when you're giving your children instructions. So we've talked about making eye contact, getting down on their level. Now you have to follow through with that. Sometimes you have to stay engaged. Giving your toddler an instruction and expecting them to carry it out so you don't have to be involved in it is beyond reasonable when you're dealing with a toddler. Toddlers need you to help them. They're not yet capable of fulfilling a lot of instructions on their own, especially if they're lacking in motivation. So if it's something they really want to do, sure, they'll go off and get their favorite toy, or they'll go fetch something, a nice book. If you say you're going to read to them, there's a real incentive for them there to go and do it. But if it's tidying up, leaving the house, putting something away, going to bed, going upstairs to have a bath, especially if they're engaged in something that they really want to do, leaving the park, coming indoors, all those things require extra incentive in order for them to listen to what you want them to do. So get them engaged, and you must be very present in those processes. This is often involved in transitions that I talk about all the time. I'm really hot on transitions. I think transitions need to be handled very carefully, and there's a lot of listening involved in transitions, whether that be leaving the house, stopping play to come to the meal table, or stopping play at the end of the day or pre-nap to go to bed. So in order to handle a transition well, you have to be very present, and you have to communicate very clearly with your child. And a nice way to get toddlers involved is to offer them some simple choices. They are beginning to flex their independent muscles. They want to do what they want to do, and they want to see how far they can go. But you could also give them more autonomy by offering 2 acceptable choices, and they must be 2 choices that you are happy with the outcome. And there are many opportunities during the day where you can offer these acceptable choices, often when you're asking your child to do something. So if you're wanting to get out the house, you can ask them, do you want to put on your red shoes or your blue shoes? The red coat or the blue coat? Would you like to take this toy or that toy? Because I often have a basket of toys by the front door where they can choose a toy, so that you can give them some control over the outcome of the event. And another mistake is that we don't model good listening. We are our toddlers' teachers. In those first precious 5 years of life, what we do, what we say, the way we behave, the way we interact with other people, they all learn how to do that themselves from watching us. So if you want your child to be a good listener, then you have to be a good listener. They have to watch you listening to other people, considering other people's words, being considerate of what they say. You need to show them how to listen and take turns in a conversation. That's why family meal times are so good, because they can witness the whole family taking turns to have their time to say what they need to say. And you include your toddler in that, and you give them opportunity. Even if they don't have the words and the vocabulary yet, they will take this all in, and they will watch the dynamic and understand how conversations work. And by watching those conversations evolve and how we speak to each other, they will learn how to listen to others. And that's a great life skill to have. Reading to your toddler and giving them a chance to have a conversation about the book that you were reading together is also a great way of getting them to listen to what you are saying, and for them to learn how to listen to you. It's important to remember that your toddler's comprehension is way beyond their ability to vocalize what they are thinking. So never underestimate what they can understand, but they might have trouble actually answering you back or putting those words into actions. Another big mistake we make when it comes to listening and toddlers is that we don't follow through with our instructions, or we babble on far too much in the background, and we repeat ourselves without actually having an action at the end of it. If we do this too often, then toddlers will switch off. They just tune you out. So you don't want your voice to become this lum, 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 sort of mumble in the background. What you want is your voice to mean something, that they pay attention and they listen. So if you're asking your toddler to do something as simple as put their cup on the table, or go and put the book back on the bookshelf, don't say it 5 times, 6 times and get frustrated and then give up and walk away, or do it yourself. Make sure they have heard you by following through with the things that we've already talked about, the eye contact, making sure they've understood what you've said, and then help them do it. Even if it means you have to take them by the hand and do it with them. That teaches them that you've given them an instruction and that it has to be followed through. And you haven't had to get angry, and you shouldn't have over high expectations about the fact that they would do it exactly when you ask them, exactly the way you want them. But what you have done is had a positive outcome. And the more of those that you have, the more your toddler will learn how to listen and eventually do it themselves without your assistance. So if you need to chivvy your little one up a bit, give them that helping hand in order to follow through on the instruction you've given them. That's so much better than getting angry because they didn't do what you said in the first place. Because chances are they haven't got the ability to do that. Toddlers are never going to be naughty or disobedient deliberately. And that's something that as parents we need to really understand. They don't want to hurt or upset you. They're just living in their moment and doing the best they can. So help your little one to listen by taking them by the hand if necessary and ensuring that they have a positive outcome. And then most importantly, when they do get it right, praise them. You can say, gosh, thank you for listening so quickly. That was really helpful. That's all you need to say. We don't need to go on for too much. Just praise the moment and move on. One thing I would like to mention is that children that come from multilingual families often are later in talking, and it may impact on their listening skills as well. So you need to be quite consistent with who's using which language when you speak to your toddler. And also your expectations have to be adjusted accordingly. So if they're having to learn to process more than one language, they might struggle to listen and follow instructions. So you're going to have to be on hand even more to make sure that they follow through with the things that you've asked them to do. And finally, I would like to make one comment on the fact that rarely lack of listening skills and communication skills can be an early sign of autism. And if you are concerned at all about your child's listening abilities, whether you think they've got a hearing problem or whether you do think they've got some sort of developmental issue, then I would always recommend going to see your paediatrician, because they can refer you to the right people to get your child assessed and to allay any fears that you might have. By the same token, on a positive note, I have known many children who seem to be struggling with speech and listening right up until about the age of 3, and then all of a sudden something clicks and they suddenly start speaking perfectly and they're understanding and then they become able to listen far better. But in the meantime, the most important thing is that you engage in this listening process and teaching your toddler how to listen. So let's be positive about it, not negative about it. Let's understand where they are at developmentally and let's take them by the hand and help them to listen. If you want some more information on how to get your toddler to learn to listen, then we have a blog post on toddler listening, which we'll put a link in the description box below. And we've also got a Calm Connections course, which would really help you communicate more successfully with your child. I really believe that communication is the key to a happy, healthy relationship with your child. And far too often in this busy world that we live in, we forget how to communicate successfully and with compassion with our children and understand where they're at developmentally. So our Calm Connection course is a really concise and easy way to lay good foundations in communicating with your toddler. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, because I'm always keen to hear what you would like us to talk about. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Thank you.